Hi guys, it's Waited, and I'm going to talk a little bit about cold wax medium. This is for the absolute beginner. A lot of the information I'm going to include is information that I struggled to find when I first started using it. I started using it several years ago, but I still consider myself a beginner with it. I'm by no means an expert, but I can answer some basic questions about it. First of all, this is what it looks like. Okay, this is cold wax medium. Squishy, slightly tacky. Okay, it is solvent based. Really don't want to play with it too much with my hands. I still do, but it's not the best idea. And why do you want to use it? Well, the appeal for me is it's very tactile. I can get great texture with it. I absolutely love that it dries to a velvety matte finish. So my painting is soft, has that very soft velvet look. It dries quickly. It alters the drying time of oil colors, and the oil tends to dry much more quickly. It's great for layering for that reason. And I don't have to worry about fat overlaying. That becomes a non-issue with the cold wax medium. It's very fun to dig back through the layers on. So yeah, it's a very fun medium. Now, what is cold wax medium? It's made out of 3 ingredients. There's a wax, a resin, and a solvent. This is the most commonly type of wax used in that it's beeswax. These are beeswax pellets. I believe I got them from Daniel Smith years ago. And yeah, it's not the only kind of wax. It's the most commonly kind used, but it's not the only kind of wax used. You can use paraffin wax, microcrystalline wax, soy wax. All of them have different properties, so all of them bring something a little different to the medium. The second thing that it is made up of is a resin. Now, here's a Damar nugget. This is the resin that you melt, okay, and it stiffens it up, okay, and gives it some different adhesion properties. Different artists will use different types of resins as well, Damar being the most common, but I believe that Gamblin uses an alkyd resin in their cold wax medium. And here's cold wax. It looks exactly the same. So they use slightly different ingredients in theirs. And then there's also Dorland. That's the other most common maker. I think Gamblin is probably the #1 cold wax medium seller, and Dorland is second. And Dorland I have somewhere, but I've been moving my studio, so I couldn't put my hands on it. The third ingredient is a solvent, and that's usually odorless mineral spirits. This is what I tend to use, or turpentine. Okay, so those are the 3 ingredients that go into cold wax medium. What kind of paints can you use? Well, obviously oil colors. That's what I've been talking about. So just your basic oil colors are fine, okay? What else is also fine is your water mixable oil colors. They will mix with the solvent just fine. Be aware, it becomes, when you mix it with cold wax medium, it's no longer a water cleanup, okay? And we'll get to cleanup a little bit later on. But you can, if you've got water mixable oils, you can certainly use them with your cold wax medium, and it's fine. Now, okay, what do you do? How do you do this? I usually go for a 50-50 mix. Now, this is purely preference, okay? I try to go for a 50-50 mix. If I'm using student grade colors, which these are, then what I do is I mix it up, and sometimes, because these have more binder in them than artist grade oil colors, the artist grade oil colors are more highly pigmented. So if I mix it up 50-50 then I take a look, and if the mixture is still shiny, because it has a little bit more of that filler, then I go ahead and mix in more cold wax. I'm looking for a nice matte look to my mixture. So that's what I base it on. I'm hoping to do a couple videos showing mixing the paints and that sort of thing. But again, it's pretty much your preference, but that's just a basic guideline to kind of follow through. So, and I do find that with my student grade I do end up using more of my cold wax medium. Now, let's see if I can shift this out of the way and get something else up here. Because I've kind of gone over this. And I want to show you there are other ways to add color. There are tons of ways to add color. Okay, so I got all kinds of stuff. Crayons work. I love crayons. I'm very hard on crayons, but crayons work extremely well. Of course, we've talked about, you know, the oil color. That's good. Following along that, I don't know if you can tell, this is an oil stick, okay, pigment stick. Love these things, absolutely love them. The if you've got another type of oil paint in a stick, that will work as well. These are currently the oil pastels that I'm using in my painting that I'm working on right now, which is actually sitting underneath this because it's dry enough. So oil pastels work. Soft pastels will work as well, as will, this is a pan pastel. This one is sparkly, and I'm going to recommend that you don't use the sparkly stuff because it tends to lose that shine. Now with these next ones, we come into that safety factor I talked about earlier. You need a special respirator mask designed to handle airborne particles. A particulate mask isn't going to be good enough, all right? You don't want to breathe in some of these things. I love using graphite and charcoal. Those to me are so much fun with cold wax medium. And you can make your own, okay, or you can buy it as I ended up doing. Pearl X pigment powders, okay, they're great, but test whatever you're doing. Depending on how you're using it, you're likely to use some of that lovely, lovely shine that Pearl X powders are known for. So test it out first before you think, oh, that would be really pretty, let me add that, because it may not give you the effect that you're looking for. And then we get to the ones that I enjoy using, but you definitely need a respirator for, and that's if you're using artist's dry pigments. These again can be very fun to use, to color, to add color, but you have to be very careful not to breathe these in. So please make sure that you do wear a mask. So I'm going to put these here. And you know, how many colors do you need? You don't need that many colors, alright? You can get a really, really lovely monochromatic painting with a black, a white, and whatever color of your choice. So you don't have to have a lot. I'll put all of these here so that I've got them in one handy tray. Additives. How can you get more texture? Because, you know, that's one of the truly cool things. Well, here's a favorite. Powdered marble powder. This is what I also use to make my regular gesso, encaustic gesso. I add this until I get a lovely dense mixture. So, but it can also add texture and some type of stiffness to your cold wax pumice stone is one that I use. It's very gritty, so that's another one. You can use dirt, you can use clay, you can use sand, you can use ash. You know, you can mix this stuff with any of that to get more texture in your painting. Substrates. Not recommended in general are canvases. Now, there's always an exception to the rule, but it depends on what you're going to do with your cold wax. If there's going to be a lot of scraping or digging through it, that sort of thing, then a canvas really isn't a good idea. What I tend to use is paper, and I do use paper for oil. Arches, it's what I love. And I'm not going to say it's inexpensive, but for a substrate it really is. It's not bad when you consider you get 12 sheets and it's, I want to say about $25. So, you know, not the best, okay? Another one that you can actually get that's a little bit cheaper than that is I just buy hardboard. I buy the hardboard and then I gesso it myself. You can get the hardboard pre-gessoed. You can, if you want to. I don't. I use regular gesso. I add in my powdered marble and create my own gesso mixture, and I will do several hardboards at a time when I do that. You can use cradle board. Wood is a great substrate. Glass is a good substrate. One of the things I really like about cold wax is you can use it on top of plaster. And I don't think I brought my plaster here. But whether it's Venetian plaster or regular plaster, you can use cold wax on top of that. It does provide a good tooth for it. So those are just some ideas on your substrates that you can use. Now, mark makers. Let's swap trays out. Bamboo skewers or the tip of a paintbrush. Okay, tip of a paintbrush is really good. Chopsticks are good. This is a spool from one of my husbands. He does leather work, and so he buys these huge spools of thread. So I've got two great circle makers here, and all of my mark makers are actually new because I threw away when I'm moving, cleaning out. Corrugated cardboard that you can press into it is awesome. Bubble wrap, of course. These make great marks. Crumpled aluminum is one of my favorite to give a really sharp, harsh. Here's another circle maker. Never throw away a spool. Never ever throw away a spool. Those are so useful. This is screening that's left over, so that is excellent to use. This is sequin waste. You can spend a lot of money for it. If you Google, I don't even remember the name of this type of ribbon, if you think of it as a ribbon and you Google this type of ribbon, you can spend a lot of money on it. If you Google sequin waste, then you can get all kinds, and there's different shapes. Let's see if I can loosen it up to pull out. I don't know if you can see, but there's some little loop-de-loo shapes in there. So you can get different shapes. It's not just circles. But please don't. Save your money. This, of course, is awesome. Every kind of palette knife you can think of. This was a gift. And I probably use that one the most. The weirdest one I tend to use the most. So it simulates flowers really, really well. So your mark makers can be anything. Anything that you can find to press into your cold wax. And the thicker the cold wax, the more impression that you'll have. This is probably one of the best, well, you can see it's discolored. This is what I use probably the most with my cold wax because it makes great lines. It scrapes really well. I can dig back through. I can apply it thickly, I can apply it thinly. Gift card is excellent. The other thing that I really like to use are stencils. And I just got some new ones now. I work with a lot of mediums, and when I use my stencils with cold wax, I don't reuse them in my arts and crafts stuff, simply because it does have the wax. You can't really get it off. This is one I won't give up. You really can't. You can't get it completely clean, and I'm just not comfortable mixing this with my acrylics. So same thing here. So I think I'm going to be doing a couple paintings that I'm going to record using stencils. I bought some new stencils. That was a treat. Most of them are very organic, but using stencils with cold wax medium is a super way to get started in just playing with the cold wax medium and seeing how it works. So it's something that I do recommend doing. Now, Studio Basics. If you want to get started with cold wax, there are a few things that you need to have. You need to have your substrate. I recommend painter's tape because, I'll show you, I've used it. I've got paper in here, and I've used it to adhere my paper to this. It's a glass underlay, but it doesn't really matter what you use. I just like glass. I like glass a lot. So I've adhered it, and I've even got some in a different size here. So especially if you're using paper, I would recommend that you get painter's tape so you can tape it down. I also recommend you've got to have a palette. Now, your palette doesn't need to be anything fancy. Generally, I recommend a piece of glass. I work on glass. That's what I usually use. Right now, I'm using this butcher's tray, which is actually what I use to roll out my oil paint, or I should say my oil-based ink for prints. So I've just been using that, but generally I use a piece of glass. Even if you go to the thrift store and you get one of those picture frames that's got a piece of glass in it, that's perfect. The thing that I do recommend, and I haven't seen this addressed a lot, but to mix the paint, I like a bendy palette knife so I can mix and move it. This is my favorite one. It's the offset handle, and I find that the offset handle is easier to use whether I'm using my butcher's tray or my glass palette, but I want it bendy. This one is also fairly good. It's a little stiffer, but it still has a little bend in it. So yeah, bendy palette knife has been a big saver. One of the things you can use for your palette is coated freezer paper. Okay, there's no reason to get anything fancy. I do recommend a gift card and paper towels. Now what you see are these brown, you see it over here, I've got a roll. This time it's brown, but these are paper, usually in art. Okay, I'm fussy and I want Viva paper towels, or Bounty at the very least, but when I'm working with cold wax, these don't leave a lint on everything, so I just prefer working with these paper towels. I'm running low. This is my last roll, so I ordered another case and they came in blue. They're still fine. So blue or brown, but they're papery. They're very thin. Now, for cleanup, you could use, of course, a solvent, but you can also use oil to clean up. Oil. This is mineral oil. You can use baby oil, you can use vegetable oil, any type of oil. Oil will cut oil, so you need some type of oil. I personally kind of like baby oil because it's got that nice fragrance added to it. You need some color. Again, with 3 colors you can make a beautiful monochromatic painting by just varying the value in the painting. I like to have one more. I usually, even if I try doing a monochromatic, then I end up adding a complementary color to give it a bit of pop. So that's me though. Nice to have are some stiff, cheap brushes if you want to do some representational painting with it. A brayer is ideal, and again, marking tools. So that's it. That's my basic introduction to using cold wax medium in your studio. There are a couple things I do want to go over real quick. The reason for oil paper, okay, is, now this is not with cold wax medium. This is just me testing out some colors. But you see that halo, I don't know if you can see it, the halo of oil? Okay, you can get that very easily if you are not using oil paper. Okay, oil paper helps minimize that. And now I want to show you two bits of reference material that I absolutely love. It's hard to find information on cold wax. I don't know why, but I have two sources that I love. This book, Wabi Sabi Painting with Cold Wax, was super for just getting you started, okay, getting you in. It's got a lot of inspiration in it. It gives you instructions for just getting started, for getting cold wax down onto your substrate. It gives you some ideas in how to play with it and what things you can add, types of marks you can make. You know, they're going over graphite crayons. There's so many things you can actually use with cold wax. Just not acrylic, okay? You cannot mix acrylic paint with them. And the jury is really, there's a lot of discussion over whether or not you should use cold wax with over acrylic paint. Some people use it just fine. Other people have had major issues with it. So that's one reason why I really didn't go into it. So again, this one is great to get you started. It gives you ideas and inspiration. And this is an investment. It is a huge reference. It is the more expensive of the two books, but it tells you just about everything you could ever want to know. They still have plenty of pictures to help give you inspiration in it, but it goes over the different benefits of one wax over another, of the alkyds, and just safety in the studio, collage and assemblage. Let me see if I can flip to good studio practices, of course. There's something in here that's super nice. I wonder if I can flip through and find it. That to me, they do this, okay? And it's in more than one chapter. But when it talks about this is stages of dryness, and they tell you what you can do, surface effects, transfers, what to do what happens dry. For example, right here, brayers tend to pull up wet underlying layers. I mean, they go into a lot of detail and a lot of help, as well as having lots and lots of lovely, lovely pictures. So this one, if you're sure that you want to use cold wax, I would say go for it. If you're not sure and you're just trying to feel it out a little bit, then this is a good starter book. Okay, but these two are fantastic references. I do use both books. Alright guys, that's it. That is just my basic intro to cold wax medium for absolute beginners. If you've got any questions, leave them in the comments below, and if I don't know the answer, then I will try to find out for you. And hopefully I will have a paint using stencils and cold wax, I think, is the first thing that I have planned, and that's actually what I'm planning on doing with this. This has just got a base layer. It's very dry. Because it's so dry, I can go over it with a lot of things, including you know, that soft pastel that you wouldn't think would go on top of oil or solvent based. Alright guys, that's it. I don't need to ramble. Bye.